Scott, this week we're scouring the counters of Xbox Game Pass, looking for something new. We're checking out Figment 2. This one is interesting. We didn't actually play the first one, but 2 has just been released on the Game Pass, so we wanted to check it out because I think the first thing that caught our eyes is the art style of this game. It's very unique. It's kind of hand-drawn almost, but it lends kind of really well to the type of game that we're playing here. It's kind of a puzzle adventure game where we're following a couple of characters through this. And it's one of those things where we're playing kind of in the subconscious of someone's mind, and playing as Dusty and Piper. Dusty is kind of like Courage, and Piper is this little sidekick bird that follows him around throughout our adventure. And Scott, honestly, I had a ton of fun playing this game. It's very simple, but at the same time, there's enough depth here that I really did enjoy my playthrough. What did you think of jumping into Figment 2?
Oh, well, of course, the first reaction is, this looks really interesting, and that hand-drawn art style is absolutely beautiful, but it does look like you can kind of lend that into something Tim Burton-esque, but
For sure.
Does not exactly go in this direction. Everything's really bright and colorful and vibrant, and that was really pleasing to the eye. So you get in beyond the cover and getting through some of these, putting everything together and figuring out that it's all kind of representative of the human mind was something that, again, I wasn't exactly sure what I was getting into, and that was really pleasing, again, because you get into it and, okay, there's some thoughtfulness behind this. There's a reason to the story. There's almost morals that is kind of slipping in here. So it does kind of give you a pause to think about the different topics that are being brought up. And you'll go through different segments of the mind, and that's kind of what's on display. You'll see the work thoughts, the opinions on work, arguing with the opinions on family, and how they're supposed to reconcile their differences and get along. And there's different just elements of kind of just psychology, I suppose you could look at, and
Sure.
And that represented in different ways. You're chasing a nightmare through the brain to try and defeat the nightmare, face your demons, and become more courageous for it. It has a really nice story that I did bind to, but this unfortunately leads to one of the negatives, which is that the game is just incredibly short.
Yeah, it only took me about 4.5 hours to play through, and I think it said if you want to do all the extras, you're in for maybe 7 to 8 hours. We played it on Game Pass, which is free to play if you have the Game Pass subscription, but for everybody else, this is a $25 game. And that price point for me is just a little bit high for the amount of value we're getting out of this game. The game is fun. It's really good. I think we both had a good time playing it. There are some performance issues we both ran into where we had to reload checkpoint at some point in the game, but it wasn't too bad. Nothing that really hindered us. But again, we're not really playing for that long, so we didn't have to run into that many problems. If this was longer, who knows, maybe we have some more performance. But for the most part, it was fairly minor. I think the thing outside of the kind of the graphics and the audio, which I thought was really well done in this, the kind of all the music, the composure of the music in this game done very well. The voiceovers at times could be annoying, but they were done well, so I can appreciate that too. It really lended to the story we were telling here. But the one thing I did like in this was some of the mechanics. The combat is fairly simple and easy to get into, but there is this open-minded and closed-minded mechanic where you can actually hit these totems with your sword, and it changes up basically the entire environment around you, and it allows you to kind of solve some of these puzzles depending on you're open-minded or closed-minded, depending on what you need to do, because the opinions that we talked about earlier, these characters that are around in this map, when you change from open-minded to closed-minded, their stance on certain things change, and sometimes you need them to assist you in solving some of the puzzles on the way through. And a lot of the kind of one-liners you get from these characters are fairly comical, and that lends to kind of how enjoyable this game is. But like you said, Scott, we're kind of in it for a short time and not a long time here, and I think that's really the biggest hit on this one.
Yeah, I have to agree there. The simplicity of the combat is really something that could have been a problem if the game had continued on longer, but because we're working with kind of simple puzzles, kind of simple enemies, that wasn't so bad. And when you get to some of the sections that could present a difficulty, we'll say boss fights, it doesn't really seem like difficulty is the main point. The main focal point seems to be the musical numbers, and some of those get really silly, as we were talking earlier. Some of those get really dicey, but the most fun I've had is going through and seeing how the different opinions surface. They argue with each other. Which ones do you favor? It was really interesting, and I thought I had an excellent time going through. I really just wish it was extra long.
Well, Scott, I think it's pretty obvious to tell we've enjoyed our time with Figment 2. This has been a ton of fun. Like I said, we both got to play it on Xbox Game Pass. And I'm trying not to be too biased in the fact that like you said, you kind of get to play this one for free. This has been a lot of fun. If I've got to score it out of 10, I'm going to give it a 7.5. It's, visually, with the audio, everything in this game has been a lot of fun. It just wasn't. Scott, if you're going to give it a score out of 10, what are you giving Figment 2?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you, but I'm there with an 8, just a little bit ahead of you. I had a really great time going through, solving all the puzzles, and I really, really loved the musical numbers. And before the end, it even gave me pause to get a little emotional too. It really had a bit of everything.